This was my first time racing in the United States. I start to see tires with half alive. Well, we're waiting all the way until at night and we're picking all of them. I'm not kidding you. We grabbed like 60 tires. We put all of them on the trailer. For a year and a half, I
Get
didn't
outta
buy
here.
one set of tires, man. And I won the championship with used tires.
Hey everybody, we are back. It's the Hot Rod Pod. Brian Lohnes, John McGann, and we are here at Trackhouse Racing in Concord, North Carolina, with this guy, Daniel Suárez, driver of the number 99 Chevrolet, and a guy who has an incredible story in the world of stock car racing, and certainly an incredible story of how he came to this point in his career. So, man, first off, thank you for taking some time out of a really busy weekend in Charlotte. It's the Coke 600 this next couple of days.
Yeah, this week is one of my favorite weeks of the year, really, starting because it's actually the week that I get to have my family here with me. They don't come very often. They come maybe once, sometimes twice. This is the week that they come, so I get to spend a lot of time with them. Yesterday, actually, we went to bed like 2 a.m. playing just games, table games.
Nice.
I feel like that's the reason why maybe I'm a little bit late. But well, no, it's an amazing weekend over the Memorial Day weekend. With NASCAR 600 miles, the Coke 600. I'm a Coca-Cola driver, so it's one of my favorite races of the year.
You mentioned the family aspect, and really that's where we got to start your story. I mean, we go back to you racing go-karts, 23 years ago, this whole kind of trip started. And what I found interesting kind of going back in your history was you came from a really kind of normal working class family. It was not a big money operation to get you started. And that really, to me, is something that sets you apart from a lot of the young talent we see coming in.
Yeah, listen, I have learned that every single athlete out there has a unique journey. Every journey is different. Some are more difficult than others, and none of them are easy.
Sure.
You have some obstacles in every single one of them, and certainly my journey, I believe that is in the category of the most difficult ones because if you had to make a bet on myself 20 years ago,
Long shot,
do
baby.
you think he's gonna make it as a professional racing driver? 99% of the people were gonna say no because I didn't have the connections, I didn't have the money. I went to public school, like I just didn't have any relationship. Every time that I was going to a racetrack with my go-kart, all the people I was racing against, they didn't know where I live. They didn't know my neighborhood. They didn't know my school. They didn't know we didn't have any mutual friends. So it was different, right? For me, it was different. But at the same time, that one made me unique. And I feel like that really made me be very hungry, and I understood since a very early age what kind of sacrifices my family was making for me just to have an opportunity. Nothing was guaranteed, just to have a shot. And I believe that that's one of the reasons why I was able to make it all the way here.
When did you start to realize the level of talent that you had, right? Because every young racer has the vision, has the idea of where they want to land, but the reality is it is a minuscule amount of people that actually have the talent to pull it off. What phase in your career, even as a young man, did you start to realize that I'm actually good enough to do this?
I started racing when I was 11.
Yeah.
So in my entire career, I had probably 1 or 2 new go-karts, and that was later on.
Nice.
So I always had used go-karts. I always had used motors. I raced more races with used tires than with new tires in my career.
Yeah.
And I was still winning. A lot of people used to tell me, Daniel, you just have a talent, right? And then people started hiring me to help their kids and then to set up their cars. And then when I started to believe that actually I was different, right? Because my dad always told me, hey, man, you're very good. But then people start telling me, and my dad, every single dad out there believes that their son is the best, right?
Yeah, it's
So,
100%.
so it just, I would say that when I start hearing that from other people, that's when I start to believe that I had a special talent. And then, I start to develop that talent because talent is going to take you only so far.
Sure.
And you have to work hard. And then the funny thing is that once you start making it to the higher ranks, you start to see more of that talent. You start racing against people that is talented and then more talented. And then once you get to a Cup Series, you realize that everyone is talented, right? Everyone is gifted.
Yes.
Then it's a matter of the little things. What do I mean with that? About the team, the crew chiefs, the engineers, the decision making, the mind. It's just so many different things that you have to work on, and that's a beautiful part that I have learned to realize that talent was gonna take me only so far, and after that it was gonna be discipline and hard work and be consistent.
I like what you said about the used parts, where some people would see that as a detriment. Like, I can't. I'm not competitive because I'm using used tires. I've got used equipment. I like how that shows that in spite of this, I'm a good driver.
I can sit down here with you guys for hours, and I have so many stories. The very first time that I raced outside of Mexico, it was in an international race in Las Vegas. And my dad told me, he said, hey, we have to go to that. We want you to go try that race. That was only my second year racing go-karts. He said, and if you finish in the top 5, you're gonna have a shot to go for the World Championship in Europe, and they're gonna pay your expenses and everything. So we went there. My dad said, hey, we can fly, but if we fly, we're not gonna have money for tires and things like that. But if we drive, we're gonna have extra set of tires. So anyway, we ended up driving with the team, with the mechanics, and with the trailer, all the way from Montreal, Mexico, which is east.
Yeah.
It was 2 days and a half. It was a long, long drive. I remember in a very, very small Dodge Dakota. It wasn't even a double cab. It was like a 1.5. I mean, we were like cramped like this. It was the most uncomfortable trip of my life. And then we raced there. We finished in the top 5. We ended up going to Spain for a world championship. But this is the funny part. It was my first time racing in the United States. And in Mexico, I was taught that the tire was gone all the way until the little hole was completely gone. Yeah, they were completely gone. You cannot see them anymore, or you had the course. Well, the very first day I went to Las Vegas, this race, this weekend, I start to see tires with half alive in the trash. And I told my dad, I said, look at that, man. What's going on? He said, well, I guess they have a lot of money. Yeah. Well, we're waiting all the way until night, and we're picking all of them. We're picking all of them. For all the week. I'm not kidding you. We grab maybe 60 tires. I'm not kidding you. Like 60 tires. We put all of them on the trailer. Mm-hmm. And when we finished the race, we brought them back. It was a whole deal in customs. We have to pay a few Mexicans there to let us go through the tires. And I raced for a year and a half. I didn't buy one set of tires, man. And I won the championship with used tires. Sometimes when I tell these kind of stories, people don't believe it because that's the way I grew up. I grew up really working very hard to try to find it.
It's a classic racer story. It's the type of stories that we hear about, whether it's NASCAR, whether it's drag racing. Those are the type of stories that make people root for a guy like you, that endear people because it's very real. It's a very real thing. There's a picture of you on your website. You're a young kid next to a green Volkswagen Beetle, the headlights hanging out of it. What is going on there? What is that?
When I was a baby growing up, born, my dad had a restoration shop. He worked on cars. He used to have like a little parts, like a auto parts sale kind of thing. And his main thing was the Beetles, and the bosses and things like that. So I grew up working with these things. And I remember when I was maybe 5, 6 years old, Fridays and Saturdays, I was going to shop all day and then coming back with him. And as you saw in that picture, since I was a baby, a kid, a very young kid, I was already like, with hanging in the steering wheel and things like that. And I mean, to this day, that's kind of like what I do. This morning, I'm not kidding you, this morning I was adjusting how you call these things in English? The balancines, the rockers, the little...
Adjusters?
The adjusters, the rockers, right?
Yeah.
That's called with the push rods, the rocker arms. I was adjusting those things this morning. Like, I just love doing that. Like, I look at my hands. Like, I'm a part-time mechanic sometimes.
Is the bus, is it a stock air-cooled motor? Is it hot-rodded or is it swapped?
The one that I was messing with this morning is a double cab, 1963, and it has a 1710. So it's a little bit bigger motor. Okay. I have some that I have a stock motor, and I have one of them that is my favorite. I have like 200 horsepower in it.
Nice.
Yeah, I have a little bit of everything.
Well, I saw on your Instagram page the link to is it DNS Restorations?
Yeah.
Is that the name of the shop?
Yeah, that's the name. That's the name of now. It's my dad's and myself shop. I don't know if you guys know the story, but when I was like 16 years old, my dad sold his business to continue to support me. It was one of those deals that I was already kind of like making it, but it was still like I needed a little bit more. So he went all in and he sold his business. He had like his auto parts store and his restoration business. Nothing huge, but he sold it. He kind of like transpassed it and he got some money out of that. And a good portion of that money went towards myself. And luckily, things work out. Fast forwarding, 8 years later, I started making some money. And I said to my dad, hey, Dad, I want to restore a Beetle, man. I want to restore a Beetle. So he started talking to a few of his friends. And he said, hey, you know what? Like, I don't know if they're gonna do the job that I really want. And I say, hey, Dad, why we don't put a shop together? I feel like I owe you that. he said, man, I don't know. And I said, let's do it, let's do it. So I convinced him, and I partnered with him, and I pretty much I gave him the shop that he sold for me.
Wow.
And right now he has a lot of fun,
Yeah.
and he enjoys the messing with the shop and working with
Yeah,
cars.
the work's
and things like that.
beautiful.
Yeah, we were looking at the pictures on the
Yeah.
Instagram page. Yeah, you got the F100. There was a Buick, a lot of air-cooled Volkswagens.
Yeah.
It's super cool. Great work.
Yeah,
too.
yeah, 70% of the stuff that he does is Beetles and Bosses,
Uh-huh.
and 30% is like everything,
Yeah.
V8s, American muscles, and Mustangs, and Camaros, and things like that. It's a lot of fun. Every time I go to Mexico, that's kind of like my relaxed time going to the shop.
How old were you when he sold the shop?
I was around 15, 16.
That's a significant weight on your shoulders too, right?
Huge.
Because I mean they're betting the house on you, and so for you to understand what that commitment is a next level thing as well. It's like it's one thing to get, oh, here's the check, go race. I mean, but now you really got to deliver the goods if this guy's willing to commit this much to you.
It was huge, man. And as you asked the question, when you're 15 years old, you already understand what the level of commitment
Sure.
that the family is doing. Not just that, he sold his shop, and we kept going in the right direction. And I started winning races in the second division of NASCAR. And I thought our goal was, okay, with this, it's kind of like you winning races in the Truck Series and expecting a Cup team to hire you from
Yeah.
the Truck Series. So it didn't happen, right? Like
Gotcha.
the Cup Series team, they want to see you in the Cup Series. Once you have success in the Cup Series, sometimes they get you. So that's kind of what happened. So we kind of like were in the middle of the bridge again, and guess what my dad did? Mortgage on my mom's house.
Oh,
Like a
baby.
year later.
Oh,
so
man.
so after that mortgage on my mom's house, I was able to get 6 races in the NASCAR Mexico Series. And then eventually, with those 6 races, I was able to take the attention of some of the big teams, and they hired me. But my dad was all in. If I didn't have a father like the one I have, I wouldn't have made it.
We moved to 2016. You captured the championship in the Xfinity Series. I'm interested in talking to you about this because I'm a fan of all 4 levels, really, from ARCA on up. And to me, it's always interesting to watch. And what you should see when you go series to series is you should see the advancement, and you should see the maturity, and you should see the decision-making improve. My question is Xfinity now the same or different as it was in 2016? Do you think it was more mature as far as driver activity and approach and everything back when you won the championship, or is it changed into something different now?
I feel like a lot of things have changed. Almost 10 years have gone by, 9 years.
Yeah.
When I won the championship, and I remember that my very first win, I had to beat Kyle Busch for the
Passed
win.
on the last lap.
On the last lap. My championship, when I won the championship, I was racing against Kyle Larson. I was racing, he wasn't racing for the championship, but he was in the same race because the Cup drivers back then, they were allowed to race as many races as they wanted. So I believe that I would have won way more races if there were no Cup drivers like there is right now. That now the Cup drivers are allowed to, I think, a handful of races, and that's it. I would have won. My curriculum will look way nicer, but I wouldn't have learned what I learned, right? Like I was racing against the best of the best every single week. So it's different now. I actually don't dislike the new rules of NASCAR of limiting the Cup guys. With that being said, now the guys from Xfinity and trucks, they go to Cup, and the jump is bigger.
Yeah.
The jump is bigger because the bar, they don't really know what is the bar.
Yeah.
I think Larson said not
It
too
was
long
great
ago.
a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, he's right. Like, they're winning and they're doing all these things, but they don't really know what is the bar. They think that, okay, that's it. But once they go to a Cup Series, it's a completely different level. Not just in drivers, but in engineers, in pit crews, in everything.
To reference what Daniel's talking about, Kyle Larson did an interview where he said he enjoyed going down to the Xfinity Series because he kind of gets to show these guys what it's supposed to look like. And he was unabashed about it. He's like, yeah, I enjoy doing this to kind of give them the idea of as good as you think you might be right now, that ain't it. Like, there's a way to go.
I think that perspective would be hugely valuable as a driver in that series to just see what that next level is.
Of course, and there is a lot of talent in the Truck Series, in the Xfinity Series, but it's very important also to continue to improve, right? And to stay humble and always to continue to move forward. And I believe that when you had the Cup drivers almost every single weekend 9 years ago, you were pretty humble because they were kicking your butt 90% of the time. So It's different times, but I don't dislike the new system. I just think that it's just different, and it gives more opportunities to winning, to Xfinity regulars.
To jump back a little bit, when you first came to the country, you famously were in Buffalo, New York for a
Yeah.
stretch of time through the dead cold of winter, and it was snowing every day. But that was a formative moment in your life, and you go into the K&N Pro E Series at that point. Outside of the normal cultural barriers of that and that adjustment, what was the most intimidating part of that portion of your career, or was it intimidating?
It was very intimidating, especially for myself, because I come from a family that is very humble, very family oriented. Like my mom, until maybe around when I moved here, she has never flown in a plane. Very old school kind of family. So for me to leave my country, to leave my family, my friends, my home, and a different language, different people, different culture, it was a change.
Yeah.
It was a very big change, and that was intimidating, right? Like, because if I needed help, there was nobody to ask.
Yeah.
There was nobody to ask. You just have to figure it out. And that's why I always tell people that the most difficult years of my life were from 2011 to 2013, because at that time I moved here. I didn't have money. I didn't have friends. I didn't have connections, and I didn't speak English, and I couldn't communicate, right? Like, if I wanted to talk to you to ask for a glass of water, I couldn't, so it was a challenge. It was a challenge. At the same time, I had a lot of lonely nights by myself, and it really made me think how bad I wanted this.
Yeah.
How bad do you want this? And like I said earlier, everyone's journey is unique, and I believe that at the time it didn't look great, but that's what makes my journey very different.
When Troy Williams first called you for that opportunity, was there any hesitation? I mean, you knew this was the path you wanted to take. Obviously, this was going to be a huge leap to kind of get completely outside of anything you're comfortable with. But was there any hesitation in saying yes?
The reason why I met Troy Williams is because a guy from Mexico, Jose Suarez, he's brother of Felix Suarez. He's the one that connected me with Troy and put me into a race in the Toyota All-Star Showdown in California in 2011.
At Irwindale.
At Irwindale.
Yeah.
The very last year, actually. The very last year they did it. And they were not expecting me to qualify. Like, there were like 60 cars, only like
Nice.
40
Okay.
cars were going to make it. Long story short, and we qualified 11 or something like that. So everyone was impressed, especially for Troy, because Troy, it was a very, very small team from Buffalo, New York.
Yeah.
And the very first thing that Troy told me after the race was, "Hey man, I think you are very good, and I think that if you can communicate, if you can speak English, you can have potential. What about if you?"
They said the same thing about me.
So the guy, Troy, he say, "Why you don't come to Buffalo, New York, and start practicing your English?" And I say, "You know what? Maybe that's a great idea." At the time, without speaking English, without knowing much about NASCAR, I was very naive on the situation, and I thought, literally, I thought that the Charlotte was in Buffalo, New York. So I got there, and it's full of snow, and I couldn't ask these questions that I had in my mind, right? And then I start learning, and then I see Troy's shop that is very small, and I start looking for more stuff and racetracks, and I said, "Man, this is not as big as I thought it was gonna be." And then I watched the Daytona 500 2011. I watched it from his home. Trevor Bay won that one, and I thought to myself, "Man, NASCAR is not here. It's in Charlotte, North Carolina." So I called my dad and said, "Hey, Dad, this
We've made a
NASCAR
big
thing,
mistake."
this NASCAR thing is not here. It's over there." A couple months later, I lived there for a few months. I came back to Mexico. I prepared my Beetle, a 1994 Beetle. I rebuilt the engine, transmission, suspension, brakes, everything very quick. And I drove all the way from Mexico to here.
You drove a damn Volkswagen all the way to Charlotte.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Wow.
Yeah, I still have it. I still have that car in my house. And I got here, and I start to look for opportunities. And then I realized I couldn't even rent an apartment because I didn't have Social Security. And I had to live with friends of friends for a little while, and that's how I started in the middle of 2011.
It's an incredible story, and like everybody's career, you have peaks and valleys. I want to talk about a valley. 2020 season was a very difficult one for you, right? How difficult is it to get yourself to the racetrack and knowing, in reality, you're not really in competitive equipment, right? You're out there, you're doing the thing, but for a guy who's been a champion, that has to almost break your heart. But I mean, you have to do something to stay active. So talk to me about the struggle of that. That particular season was very difficult.
So 2020 was a very strange year, not just for me but for the entire world. After everything that happened in 2019, the way I left Stuart House very late and how everything happened. I always had a great relationship with Toyota, so they had this project to start another strong Toyota team, and I was gonna be the beginning of that project, and everything looked great on paper. We knew we were gonna struggle the first 6 months, but the second 6 months, the second half of the year looked actually very promising with a partnership with Jogi Racing and all these different things. Toyota was very involved in it. Unfortunately, COVID hit, and when COVID hit, obviously everything changed. Everything, the money that was gonna come in didn't come. The cars, the partnerships, the things, everything changed. So it became I knew it was gonna be a difficult year, and then it just became a nightmare.
Yeah.
It became a nightmare, and I started to realize that I'm not built to go and make an appearance to a racetrack. I'm built to
go out there and just
compete.
ride around. Yeah.
That's not my thing. Like I just can't do that. If that's what I'm gonna do for a living, I'm gonna do something else because I'm just too competitive to accept that I can win. In all the time, I promised to myself that the work and the discipline, it was gonna be exactly the same. I make sure that I was organizing the competition meetings because we didn't have any. I was making sure that we organized the reports, pre-race reports, post-race reports. Like I was doing all that like if we were in a big team. I wanted to continue to push myself, to continue to set the standard to myself. Even though that I knew I was going to race for 20th, 25th, 28th, I needed to continue to put the bar high for myself because I knew that that was not going to be for me. Either they were going to get much better or I was going to leave.
Yeah.
And then shortly after I had a few offers from other groups. One of them being Trackhouse, which was in a piece of paper. And that's how we got started with Trackhouse.
Your whole story is about
Pushing
being
through.
self-motivated.
Yeah.
Even in like that mess of a situation, you still managed to find some way to push yourself and engage yourself somehow. So what is that rooted in your mom and dad? Is it rooted in something that started before racing? Where is that part of you from?
I have something, man, inside of myself that, first of all, I feel like I'm very, very thankful to God that I have. That I just have a fire inside of myself that I just cannot look at my mirror every morning or every night knowing that I didn't give everything I got. I just can't do it. I just can't. Like, I have to give everything I have. That's number one. And number two, seeing my family make all these sacrifices for me. And, growing up with a family of 5 in a two bedroom, 1 bathroom house, having to fight to get into a shower, having to fight to go pee,
Right. Yeah.
and things like that. I guarantee you that 99% of drivers didn't have to experience this. So I have this extra motivation inside of myself that I'm like, I have had to go through way more than most of the drivers. So for me, having to push myself harder, having to work extra hard is okay. It's not the first time I've done it. It won't be the last one. I always tell people this, like, when I was younger, I used to feel like, man, sometimes I feel like I'm very, very unlucky, that I grew up with a family, not with a lot of financial support or with all these connections and things like that. Because I came to realize when I get more mature and more smart that all these unlucky situations were actually the best thing that could have happened to me because this built me to be able to get to this point. And I guarantee you this, if I didn't have all these different challenges, all these different situations, I was not going to be the first to do many things as a Mexican here in NASCAR.
Sure, absolutely. And you appreciate things that much more too, don't you?
Of course, yeah. You just appreciate things and
being grateful.
Yeah, you have to be. And for me, one of the most important things is that if you forget where you came from, you don't know where you're going anymore. So that's why for me it's extremely important just to stick to my roots and my friends, not my new friends, but my old friends, the ones that I have known since I had nothing, and that for me is special.
So you make the decision to come to Trackhouse, which is another kind of risky decision to a degree, right? Because this is a team, Justin Marks, I think his story in a lot of ways mirrors yours. I mean, this is a guy that's taken some big chances and he's done some incredible things. And obviously we're sitting in this palatial race shop right now. This team strikes me as so unique in the sport because of The approach is very modern. It's very young. It's very cool. Why do you fit here the best?
In 2020, when Ty Norris at the time, when he was here, and Justin Marks, they reached out to me about this project. I went to my dad and I went to my American grandpa. I call him that he's my manager, and Gustavo Arenas, and I told him about this Trackhouse project. At the time, I also had a couple other offers from pretty decent teams.
Yeah.
But there was something about what Ty Norris and Justin Marks were telling me, that the vision that they had, and I told my dad and Gustavo and say, hey, I think I want to do the Trackhouse thing. They said, man, I don't think that's the best option. Like they didn't want me to do it because we were just coming from a project very similar that didn't work out. But I knew that it didn't work out because of COVID. Like there were a lot of external situations that happened that didn't work out. So my dad and Gustavo said, man, I don't know, man. I would take one of the other options instead. So you stable yourself again and you start being competitive again. And I said, Dad, I think these guys believe in me. You know, I haven't had a team believe in me like these guys are showing me in the Cup Series. So I think I want to do this. My gut feeling, I have always believed and listened to my gut feeling a lot. And I told my dad and Gustavo, I said, I think I want to do this. Listen, if it's the right answer, if it's the right decision, good. And if it's not, you know, we make decisions, right? In life. That's the way life works. And here we are right now, you know, like after a year, they told me, hey, I guess you were right. You know, really, Justin has been amazing. Ty was amazing on his time here. These two people were extremely important to grow Trackhouse the first few years and really to have what we have today.
Does that tie into what you were saying before about how that becomes sort of the intangible thing, that once you're at a cup level driver, then it's the gelling between you and the team and the engineers? Is that the kind of thing that makes you feel like you can excel here in this team?
Something that I have learned with time is that it's very important to have the leaders of the team that believe in you and understand what you need. In instance, if you need an engineer of X type or a crew chief or whatever that may be, if you're asking for something that we need to pay attention, you have to feel like that voice has a weight, right? Because if he doesn't have a weight, you don't feel important. Maybe you can win once in a while, but you're not gonna be super strong. So I learned I have that here in Trackhouse, and it's something that is very important to continue to grow. Like I said, in my Cup career, I have never felt so supportive of everything that I need. Like I have here in Trackhouse, especially the early years, you know, when we're building things, you know, like, hey man, we have to get these people, let's go talk to him. Okay, let's go talk to him. Things like this. And obviously we always want more, right? I believe that Trackhouse, you know, starting in 2021, or, you know, we were getting our feet wet, and 2022 was an amazing year. 23 was a good year. 24 was a decent year. But we still have work to do. You know, we are never comfortable, and we know that. We still have things that we want to improve. We know our strengths and we know our weaknesses too as well. So we have to continue to work in both. Our strengths, make them even better, and our weaknesses, we have to continue to put a lot of attention to them.
I want people to understand the relationship among team drivers in an operation this size. Obviously, you're three guys, you all have your own life, but when it comes to Sundays at the racetrack, you are a team. So between you and Ross Chastain and SVG, are there shared goals? What is the communication level? Like, take me down to the bottom line of what it means to have two other guys on your team.
Yeah, so right now, this year, in 2025, is way better than what it was really the first few years, because the first few years, in my opinion, we were operating in a way that the one team was doing his thing.
Three teams in the same building instead of one team.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the way we used to do it. And you know, sometimes the one team was hitting something amazing, and sometimes the 99 team was hitting something amazing. But we didn't work together as good and as efficient as we should. But it worked for some time. But then when the competition catch up, we learned very quick that it was going to be more efficient to work together, right? I feel like right now we are just we're working well together. You know, we not just here in the shop during the week, in the simulator, doing all these things, but also sharing information during the weekend. So obviously once the race starts, it's every man for himself, because there is only one trophy, right?
Mhm.
So
That's right.
so we have to do our thing for our team. But in the entire journey, in the entire process, which if you ask me, you win races during the week.
Yes.
On the weekend, you got to
That's a
execute.
good point. Yeah.
You got to
Yeah.
execute.
That's a good point.
But if the car is not fast when it's loaded to a truck, you're not gonna win.
Yeah, there's no magic when
No.
when it comes out of the trailer, it's not gonna be any faster.
You has to
Yeah.
be you
Yeah.
has to be
That's right.
fast from Monday to Friday. That's when you know that you are gonna compete for the win, and then you go on the weekend to execute it. Execution is extremely important, but you're not gonna take a slow car from Monday through Friday and make it a winner for the weekend.
One last thing I want to hit you up on before we let you go. Phoenix this year, you were incredibly classy about a situation that happened that you got caught up in that was none of your own doing. You got a top 5 car. You have a race car that is as good as anybody else's on the racetrack. You have a driver that has very limited experience in the series, causes a very unfortunate situation. You end up, I think, somewhere around 23rd. And again, you handled it with a lot of class because you didn't throw the driver under the bus. You talked about the idea of the level of experience and skill you should have to be on the racetrack. So I guess my last question to you is, and we touched a little bit on it before, are the drivers we see coming out of Xfinity of the caliber and quality for you guys that are veterans to trust on the racetrack out of the gate?
I think that most of them they are.
Okay.
I think most of them, most of the drivers that are leaving the Xfinity Series to the Cup Series, I think they have what it takes to start the process of continual learning because they're not ready.
No.
No, they're not ready. But they are going to continue a different journey
Right.
now to be competitive in the Cup Series. One thing is to be competitive in Truck Series. One thing is being competitive in the Xfinity Series. And another whole different thing is being competitive in the Cup Series. So it's funny because I remember when I was racing Xfinity, man, you had a little bit of an off day, like you were not great, the car was okay, and you finished top 5, finished top 10. In the Cup Series, when you have one of those days, you finish 25th, 20th. So the competition is that much tighter.
Yeah.
With that being said, I also think that we race in the most prestigious, more difficult, and competitive stock car series in the world. So, in my opinion, the process to allow people to race with the best drivers of stock car racing in the world, it should be difficult,
Amen.
right?
Amen.
If I
Yes.
want to race I believe I'm one of the best racing drivers in the world, especially to race NASCAR cars. But if I want to race a Formula One car tomorrow, I'm not allowed.
No.
Because I don't have
Right.
I don't have the
Yeah.
experience
Yeah.
to run that.
Sure.
Do I have the talent? Of course. I know that if I have the time and if I have the support, I can run those things.
Yeah.
But I'm not qualified to run those cars next week, right? So I think we should make it a little bit more difficult for drivers to get into the Cup Series,
Yeah, I
regardless of
agree.
where they come. You have to have
Yeah.
X amount of results or experience, even in the Xfinity Series,
Sure.
to be able to go into the Cup Series.
Well, man, thank you so much for taking the time to hang out with us. Fascinating conversation. Wish you all the luck this weekend at Charlotte, and truly
you, man.
good dude, man. Great to catch up.
Thank you,
so
guys.
much.
Thank you so much.
The Hot Rod Pod will be back as we continue a lot of great stuff we're doing out here in the Charlotte, North Carolina area. Way more to come. He's John, I'm Brian, he's Daniel, and he's leaving in a way cooler car than us.